Hey everyone, Mike Klingler here, and I wanted to give an update on usi-tech and the legal stuff and the issue of them returning back to the US and Canada. I'm going to go over the letter from their attorney that you guys all have had access to in the back office. Not sure if you're aware of that. There's a lot to talk about. So I've got a beverage here, and I might need a lot of water because there's a lot to say and there's a lot to review. So hopefully you've got some time to kind of soak all this in. I don't have a lot of definitive answers, but I'll come back to this legal letter in a moment. After releasing the interview of Horst, the CEO of usi-tech, the interview that he had with one of the usi-tech distributors. That was on January 22nd that I posted that. Today's the 28th, so that was about 6 days ago. I've been following very closely the legal developments and discussing with somebody who's an attorney a lot of the details. And I have also been notified of other events that I think are really, really important in getting a really clear picture of what's happening behind the scenes and the complexities of all of this and what it might mean to those of us in the US and Canada that are waiting for the withdraw button to show up, and what it might mean to those that are outside the US as well, and outside the US and Canada. So, I just feel, an obligation to share and pass this stuff on. Even though it doesn't give us any definitive answers, it clues us in on a lot of the challenges that USI is facing, and it even brings forth more questions, which I think are important for people to be aware are still unanswered. So with that said, let me start with the kind of breaking down the letter from Hart David Carson. I thought something that's interesting is this is written by usi-tech's attorney, who apparently is also a shareholder. So I thought that was interesting. And I think that kind of, at least that's my understanding, it says shareholder right under his name. It just kind of brings forward a little bit more clarity on why it was written in the way that it was. It's like kind of a balance between marketing and still legalese and framing. So it's kind of an interesting thing to consider there, which could have pros and cons, in terms of how we interpret it. usi-tech Limited, attention Horst Jicha. So this is a letter, and it's interesting they're sharing this letter with us, with everybody, being that, it was a letter written to Horst Jicha. I'm guessing that's because Horst wants us to know how he's making the decisions that he is. He's been claiming all along that it was his attorney's recommendation, strong recommendation, that they turn off US and Canada, and that all of the things that they did that a lot of people were really offended by, the kind of framing the problem being, the distributors in the US and Canada, even though a lot of people weren't even promoting and of course got blocked out. And so a lot of people were really upset by the actions that USI took. And USI, was stating that, well, this is what our attorneys are insisting that we do. So I think, and I'm just speculating here, just kind of help kind of introduce you to all this. I think that usi-tech and Horst is wanting us to see what he was receiving from his attorney that led him to feel like he had to make the decisions he did to protect the entire company. And if that's what's happening, I think that's reasonable for them to do. I think we have to keep in mind that everything that's happening behind the scenes, they can't share with us all the details from a legal reason, from a marketing positioning point of view, and within absolute reason. I mean, there's levels of transparency, and no company is 100% transparent about everything that happens behind the scenes with their product development and decisions that they make, and financial decisions. There are certain standards that have to be met in terms of companies and organizations communicating certain things. We need to always keep in mind we can't know everything that's going on, and all we can do is speculate on a lot of these things, but we need to take a really serious look at what we do know, and then at the questions that remain. as we move forward here, as we, in the U.S. and Canada, we await that withdraw button. I heard, for example, today people are still in the U.S. are still buying packages, BTC packages. Someone sent new money, new funds in to purchase the tech coin. And while that may be a really intelligent decision, I don't know. I feel it is my obligation to share the things that I do know, so that people are making those decisions, with at least the information that I have, and they're aware of the still unanswered questions before they make those kinds of decisions. So again, this is a letter from USI's attorney to Horst, and it reads, and we'll break this down. I got so much more to share with you about everything. Per our conversation, usi-tech Limited has asked this firm to draft the present memorandum detailing the current state of USI in the United States, the issues presently affecting business development in the United States, and the primary concern with future involvement in business in the United States. Okay. As you are aware, USI is actively involved in ongoing regulatory matters. In the following states, and I don't know how many of you read this. By the way, I didn't mention, you can access this letter, and you've been able to via a link in the letter that opens up it opens up automatically when you log in to your usi-tech back office. When you log in, a letter pops up from Horst, and in that letter is a link to this letter. So you guys can read this, and maybe you already have, but I think there's some things that we really need to break down here, and some additional information that I have that maybe that you'll feel is important to know. So he's saying that, as you're aware, USI is actively involved in ongoing regulatory matters in the following states: Minnesota. I didn't know that until I read this. Washington. I actually found out about that via someone downline to me who was served with a cease and desist letter and asked to come in got a subpoena to come in, and I'll talk a little bit about that with you. I won't mention his name, of course, just for privacy reasons. But I think it's important to know that that's happened, and a little bit more about that. That was the first when I heard when he reached out to me, concerned naturally that he's being subpoenaed in regard to his involvement with usi-tech. Of course, he was alarmed, as was I, and that's what spurred me on to start asking more questions, and again led me to read this letter a little bit more carefully, think about all the angles, discuss it with someone else who's very aware of all these things going on and that communicates with corporate. And it's kind of led me to feel obligated to share with you everything that I know, now that I feel like I can communicate kind of a clearer understanding of the challenges that USI is facing right now, and the still unanswered questions that I think it's important that we acknowledge. So Minnesota is having issues, regulatory issues. Washington, this is coming from USI's attorney. Washington, Texas, which we knew about, and Hawaii, and I didn't know about Hawaii. Counsel at HDC, that's the law firm. Counsel at the law firm is actively engaged with each of the aforementioned states and is working to identify the principal state-based issue. Resolve said issue accordingly. Hold on here. Robin's picking me up some food. That's a lot of legalese. Let me just say that he's basically acknowledging that he's dealing with these states that have called into question various things around regulatory compliance with USI or USI distributors. What's interesting is there's another attorney who's been in communication with Hawaii and I believe Texas, and so far hasn't received any confirmation other than they haven't. The cease and desist in Texas still exists and has not changed, and that they didn't receive anything from USI to challenge that. I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but from everything that I've gathered, the cease and desist still exists in Texas. And as far as Hawaii goes, they also well, they just acknowledged that what we already know, that USI is not licensed as a security. Of course, USI's stance is they don't need to be, but nonetheless, there hasn't been any confirmation yet from the states that there's been any resolution so far with the concerns, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'll share with you in a moment a little bit more about what I know about Washington, which further indicates that there's issues in these states. Council at okay, so I'll kind of move on here. This being said, I don't know if you can even read this. Maybe you can open this up in your back office and follow along. This being said, it can be stated without equivocation that the primary objection posited by each state revolves around, so the issue basically revolves around the marketing techniques employed by USI members when holding public demonstrations, so like events, and or marketing USI over the internet via video or blog. So he's saying that absolutely, without question, the issue is how the distributors are presenting the USI opportunity. However, what I got out of reading the subpoena and the cease and desist from the state of Washington that somebody in my downline team had received just out of the blue, someone who really wasn't a heavy promoter or anything, so it was quite a surprise. What I got out of that was different than this. Now, I'm not an attorney. My opinion and view and interpretation of all of this is just the opinion of me, some guy who isn't a legal expert, but I just want to share with you that USI is saying, and maybe they're 100% right, their attorney is saying, and they're saying that USI as an entity themselves is not being challenged by these states. But when you read the Texas cease and desist order, it lists USI. And I guess the position of USI's attorney is, well, that was because that interpretation that USI was doing something wrong was because these two distributors in Texas were misrepresenting the company and doing things that were in violation of the terms in terms of the guarantees they were making and all kinds of stuff. But if you look at it closely, it can really be interpreted differently. And when I saw the subpoena and cease and desist out of Washington, it was really clear to me, and again, I'm not a legal expert or an attorney, but I'm just telling you, I feel obligated to share with you that it seemed to me that the issue runs further than just with how the distributors are representing the opportunity. It seems like they're challenging, they're saying that USI is marketing a security, that cryptocurrency, the way that they're packaging cryptocurrency as a security. Now there's no precedent for that. And we always knew that it would be challenging. And certainly one could argue, and maybe that's what our attorney's arguing, that because of the way the distributors, and I attended some of those meetings up in Washington, so I know exactly what they might be referring to, even though they didn't allow cameras in there and stuff. Like the way that they were communicating the opportunity, was pretty hyped up. Now, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about the opportunity, but I mean, it was, I could see how people could come out of those meetings feeling like it was a guarantee, like a lot of this was a guarantee return, and would start passing that around as information. And even, anyway, I could see how that could, maybe USI's attorney is arguing that it's because of that these regulators have this idea that usi-tech is marketing a security. But I just want you guys to know that from my perspective, and I feel obligated to share that with you, for whatever reason, whether it's because of how the distributors were marketing or not, the ultimate feeling is that at least Washington and Texas, I don't know anything about Hawaii and Minnesota, but would assume it's the same, but at least in Washington, Texas, for whatever the reason, whether it's because of the way the distributors were marketing it or whatever, those states right now, I think, are looking at USI as a security. If it's a security, then they need to be licensed to sell a security. Now, this is the nature of a developing industry. Like, understand that this is challenging stuff. To bring something innovative to market, something new, in terms of conceptually, as this clearly was. sometimes you can face a challenge like this from regulators and you can win. But I think we need to understand that even the attorney here, a little at the end of the letter, acknowledges the challenge of doing that, and we need to be aware of that. So, okay. So, additionally, it appears to be a widely held stances. It appears to be a widely held stance, I think it means, among the various states that, but for the marketing, if it wasn't for the marketing techniques of the U.S. and Canada-based USI members, USI could develop a pathway to full regulatory acceptance without tremendous issue. So that's a really interesting, this is kind of underscoring the point that I was trying to say this attorney is making. I'm going to read it again. It appears to be a widely held stance among the various states that for the marketing techniques of USA and Canada-based USI members, USI could develop a pathway to full regulatory acceptance without tremendous issue. So to me, what that means is, again, I'm not a legal expert, and I'm in no position to be giving advice on what all this means from a legal perspective. But for those of you who need a little help kind of walking through all of this and thinking through it, and I want to share more with you about other things that I know that impact the meaning of all of this, maybe this is helpful for you from that perspective. So he's saying that if the marketing techniques in the US and Canada were done properly, then USI could develop a pathway to full regulatory acceptance. That would be awesome. Like, I would love to see that. And if that's true, then wow, USI's back. But it kind of contradicts what, not completely, but it doesn't contradict completely. But the letter ends in a way where we really need to be aware of not just the positives and the potential upside, but also the potential downside and where they're at and the challenges they face and what it all means. And also, I want to talk about this cease and desist that someone in my downline team got that I really feel like anybody could have got, and and it's causing him a lot of headache. And I think I just feel obligated to share it because I'm aware of it. So anyway, he says, this being said, the issue of regulating and monitoring USI members' marketing techniques remains an outstanding matter. So he's saying, so in order to make sure that people in the US and Canada are marketing properly, and by the way, he's singling out US and Canada because our regulatory compliance in Canada and the US is much more strict and rigid and confining than anywhere else in the world, which they had been telling us all along, and they'd been warning us about this, but they really didn't put in measures to do what they're seeing that they need to do now, that they need to have a way to for the company USI to regulate and monitor the USI members and our marketing techniques. They're saying that's still an outstanding matter. So they're saying that, without better ways to, to monitor and regulate the USI members, USI is at huge risk here. And it must be addressed prior to any consideration, just continuing here, must be addressed prior to any consideration of re-entry into the U.S. market. So we need to acknowledge that, a lot of people are really excited, and I was too, that USI is coming back into the U.S., but the attorney themselves in the letter, in the letter that USI is giving us, this is them saying this, that hasn't been addressed yet, and it needs to be addressed before they can really re-enter into the U.S. market. So that's them saying this. Maybe they're addressing it now. Maybe that's my assumption. That's what we're hoping for, right? But that's what needs to happen according to them, and that makes sense. And again, I want to underscore this is based off the assumption that even if the distributors were to market themselves exactly the way USI want and their attorneys want us to, this is still kind of leaning on a really hopeful view that states still wouldn't have a problem. And I'll talk a little bit later about, it just kind of seems like that may or may not be the case. I mean, the cease and desist order in Texas seems to imply that USI is selling a security, which would mean they need to be licensed. Now, maybe they think that because of the way the distributors marketed it, but it kind of, when you read it, And I've seen another attorney interpret it this way. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It could mean even if the marketers do it properly, they might have an issue. And we need to acknowledge that that's an unanswered question. And when we look at Washington State and the cease and desist that we saw, they didn't call out this distributor for any wrongdoing. Now, maybe they saw the distributor do wrongdoing, but it doesn't call it out, it doesn't name it, and it really seems more fixated and focused around USI's model itself being a security. I happen to know Washington, by the way, has very strict laws in comparison to most states about cryptocurrencies being securities. And it's partly why exchanges like Gemini, where you can buy Bitcoin, aren't in Washington. A lot of companies in and around cryptocurrency have a hard time being in Washington state because of the really strict stance that they've taken on cryptocurrencies being securities. So, there's a lot still up in the air. And, again, whenever you have that kind of scenario in a developing industry where there's a lot of uncertainty around regulatory compliance, there's a lot of opportunity there for huge gains, but then you run into these kinds of challenges. And most of us, myself included, are fairly new to getting to capitalize on, high return opportunities in developing markets that aren't clear on regulation yet. That's something that usually only the big fish get to do. We're born into, families that leave trust funds of hundreds of millions of dollars. So this whole decentralized nature of cryptocurrency has opened up opportunities to the regular people like us, which we really should have every right to take part in, with some understandable protections and so forth. But man, the way that they're dealing with it, it does seem anti-American, to say the least, in terms of having a free market. It seems like they could be more collaborative, right, and not so militant in their approach to figuring out some of these things. But obviously, we know that it's a big, regulatory compliance. They have a different perspective, and I'm not going to knock them, but just a different perspective than those of us that are trying to innovate new, conceptual opportunities that come through the cryptocurrency movement. They're just not going to all be interested in helping figure all of that out. They're going to say it's a security. That's what a lot of them are doing. It sounds like they're saying it's a security, and this is the way it needs to be. Not a lot of room for conversation there. Just the way the system's set up. So anyway, coming back to the letter, I would advise that USI employ a system of internal regulation and vetting process specific to reviewing proposed marketing scripts, marketing sales materials, and USI corporate documents. Now, we thought that was coming and going to be introduced in late October, early November at the London event. They had talked about that. They obviously knew this was an issue, but they had so much going on, and I think they were focused so heavily on promotion, right, and growing, that they didn't allocate enough resources to doing that. And I'm not placing blame. It's extremely challenging what USI has done, but in hindsight, it looks like they were aware that they needed to solve this problem, but just didn't have the resources, or just didn't allocate the resources to solving that sooner, which may have contributed to this manifesting. Secondarily, the issue, so the attorney's saying this has to be done, and we've known it's had to be done. We thought it was coming at the early November London event. So they're still working on that. Again, the big question is, even if they had that, and even if every USI member abided by it, is it 100% certain that all these states are going to accept that USI is not a security? We don't know. I just want to be clear, that's not 100% certain. We need to be aware of that, right? Like, it's not 100% certain. That's why he used the word could. USI could develop a pathway. Anyway, secondarily, the issue of account review, auditing, and oversight in North America remains a consistently troubling issue. Account review, auditing. Okay, so now he's kind of getting into that issue that a bunch of the highest pay, not all of them obviously, but a lot of the highest paid distributors in USI were stacking positions underneath them, apparently. Again, I don't know this for sure, but this is my understanding. And they were using the rebuy feature, they were using what was it called when you could purchase underneath you? Like you could, you remember when we had that feature where we could purchase with someone underneath us? And remember, they took that away, so that does kind of confirm that they might have discovered an issue where there's a limit on the amount of Bitcoin people were allowed to take out of their accounts. And if somebody stacked 20 positions underneath them, and they were just, which you could do easily, right? If you had enough money together, you would figure out how to get the 20 positions underneath you. And you remember they required at one time that you had to go through a lot of stringent stuff to validate the address and everything. Maybe they used family members, I don't know, but you could see how if they were making hundreds and hundreds of Bitcoin a day, remember the cap was a withdrawal limit of 2 Bitcoin a day, right? But if you were making hundreds of Bitcoin a day with one of these positions of the people at the top, and then you started buying the extra Bitcoin, you would put it in positions below you, you could see how they could milk the company pretty fast if they went 20 positions down. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is their compensation plan was so generous and incredible, really, in that way. But it opened USI up to this kind of abuse, which clearly was taken advantage of and obviously cost the company a lot of problems, and all of us problems. Anyway, secondarily, I want to emphasize, though, they haven't taken full responsibility for their role in that. They're responsible for our funds. And I'm not going to be negative on USI. What they've accomplished and what they were trying to accomplish was extraordinary. And what they did accomplish was extraordinary. With that said, though, I think it's fair to bring into the discussion, with so much being discussed about what the distributors did wrong, I think it's important to bring to the discussion that it was USI's responsibility to protect our funds. With that said, I don't think we need to beat them up for that. People make mistakes, organizations make mistakes, members make mistakes. I think a lot of people have made mistakes, and that's just the way it is in life. But we should acknowledge that, I think. So anyway, he's coming to that point now. Secondarily, the issue of account review, auditing, the accounts, and oversight in North America remains a consistently troubling issue. It's interesting it's so much in North America, but from this, maybe just for opportunists, I don't know. And people saw an opportunity to exploit something and they did it. I don't know why it would be mainly a North America issue. From the statistics and figures observed by our firm, it appears that the USI system specific to North America has experienced an inordinate number of auto-generated and or falsified accounts. So again, I explained what I think that was. Maybe it goes much further. Additionally, BTC package buybacks. I think this is the part I was referring to. So it sounds like there was this auto-generated and or falsified accounts. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but sounds like, sounds bad, but I don't know exactly what that is. Additionally, BTC package buybacks specific to these accounts. Okay, so I think it might be what I was describing. Seem to be a presently unregulated issue that has resulted in a currently potential loss of USI funds. So interesting, currently potential. I don't know why here it's just saying currently potential rather than definitive. Again, this appears to be simply a matter of members exploiting the internal network functionality of USI in order to create duplicated accounts, and upon creation, utilizing these accounts and others held by the same member to execute BTC package buybacks at a limitless rate. So I don't know how it could be at a limitless rate. It seems like it would at least be limited to the amount of Bitcoin they had. I can see, so it might be much worse than even I'm imagining, but I can see how it could be pretty bad just if you had somebody generating hundreds of Bitcoin a day. They're only supposed to be able to withdraw 2. That's built into the model. And then they go and they put 20 people underneath them and start, not just taking 2 Bitcoin out a day, which, when it was at 20,000, that's, remember when Bitcoin was nearly 20,000, one position can do 40,000 a day. That's a lot of loot. If someone put 40 positions underneath them and they were able to withdraw 20 times that amount, and there was widespread, you could see how that alone would be devastating. Again, from the statistics and figures observed by our firm, it appears that the primary culprits appear in North America. So I don't know why that is, but nonetheless, that's what's being said. And could very well be. I don't see why they would pinpoint North America otherwise, but it's hard to understand why it would just be in North America, but nonetheless. With this in mind, we would advise that USI again employ a system of internal network checks and balances that would require additional and or increased know your customer obligations along with strict policies in place that, if violated, result in temporary permanent banishment. So it sounds like from this, at the time this letter was written, which was January 22nd, and 6 days ago, they still haven't solved that problem. So I don't know if they're making headway on that, but they still haven't solved that problem. Now, maybe that explains why we don't have a withdraw button yet in the US and Canada. It seems to explain why they would say that they're not going to pay commissions on rebuys, maybe until they sort that out, right? That's what he had said. They're not going to pay commissions on rebuys, and they're going to try to just pay what's owed, for return on capital initially, what's owed to the US and Canada on return on capital from money that you put in, but not on rebuys. This would make sense if all of this happened, that they say happened. It would make sense why they would go about it that way, as they try to figure out how to close this loophole where they're getting milked. And also, they don't want to pay people that might have taken tens of millions of extra dollars a piece. They don't want to pay them more until they work out some kind of deal. And from what I understand, they've started to approach those people, and instead of taking them to court or whatever, they're doing some kind of a negotiation where they're paying back some of that Bitcoin. I think that's what's happening. That's my understanding of what's happening right now. And I think that's why we don't have a withdraw button, is they're still working out the programming. And I've developed websites and so forth with programmers before, and it would be extraordinarily complex. No matter how much money you have to invest into it, it would be extraordinarily complex and challenging beyond my comprehension to change the way their database is structured and how they've been paying out with payments, in order to make it so that going forward we don't get paid on rebuy commissions. Like, what they're trying to do to deal with all this and work through it is extraordinarily challenging. And if everything has happened the way that they're saying, I feel really, really bad for them. I mean, and I gotta say, like, I'm gonna be really honest, I have a really strong mindset in terms of staying positive. And there are times where I hear things or I see things, and a little bit of fear evokes in me that maybe I've been tricked or lied to, or hoodwinked by USI. But ultimately, every time I talk my way through it, like I am right now, I keep coming back to, and I might be naive and I might be wrong, but honestly, I keep coming back to, I think this happened. It's crazy, but it makes sense. I always wondered about a couple of things. I always wondered about compensation plan. It paid extraordinarily well, and I know they're very generous, and they're extraordinary promoters, which is partly what got them in trouble with their strength. This is everybody, right? Our strengths are our weaknesses. Think about that. Our strengths are often our weaknesses. Like, for example, I'm a really positive person, and if I fall down, I get back up and just go at it again. Now, that's hurt, that in some senses has hurt me at times. Ultimately, I think it is a strength. I believe strongly it's a strength. But there are times, and a lot of people that are very conservative and don't take risks and point, and they could argue that that's caused a lot of difficulty in my life. So everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, and often there's a connection between the two. In their case, they're extraordinary promoters, and they made a compensation plan that pays so generous and extraordinarily well, which drove the growth of the company. But it also is why there was a lot of hype, and because they were such great promoters, they had promo videos with race cars. When you went to their events, they were really pumped up when they could have kind of toned it down, right? But they chose to pump it up because that's their strength. They're promoters. That's what they do. That's who they are. That's why the company was successful. At the same time, that helped create an exuberance. That helped create this culture of exuberance, for sure. And it was a blind spot for us all. But I guess what I'm saying is, when I saw that comp plan, I was like, man, that just seemed like it was overly generous, and there weren't enough restrictions, and I felt like it could be abused. So it's not a stretch for me to see how this could have happened at all. And the amount of Bitcoin that people were making because of the timing of cryptocurrency and the excitement and the growth, factored with these extraordinarily capable promoters and business developers, usi-tech, everything combined with that comp plan, I could see how this could happen. very easily. So ultimately, I land on this happened. And I feel really bad for Horst. I feel really bad for these guys because it's really easy to attack them, especially when they're down. And the decisions they've had to make, those are really tough decisions. And I think Horst is the kind of guy where, he just doesn't quit. And, again, a strength, but, it can cause him to dig deeper and deeper into a hole too. So the question is, can they dig out of this hole? And, let's assume everything's correct. I mean, well, it doesn't matter from this perspective because whether that all happened or there's other reasons why they've depleted their resources, like maybe because Bitcoin, started going sideways and down for a long time, and the entire alt currency market, maybe that was a contributing factor. Maybe that had more to do with it than we know, But whatever the reason, we can know by their own admission that they're financially in a bind, and that's just not a good position to be in. And so, can they get out of the hole? That's an unanswered question that we don't know. And while I want to contribute as much as I possibly can to helping them get out of the hole, and I feel that I have as responsibly as I could, when I have a downline team member getting a cease and desist order, I feel an obligation to share with everybody everything that I know and pull back a little bit on the exuberance, pull back, a lot on my promotional strengths, and just really, be honest about the challenges here with myself and you guys at the same time. I mean, this is the first time I've spoken out loud about it in this kind of a way. I feel responsible to do that. It's really, really important that we understand the risks before you go and you buy more packs or what have you, that you understand. I'm not saying not to, but I'm definitely not saying to do that. Because I'm saying, here's what I know. And they are in a challenging position, and the attorney admits that. So this isn't just me saying that. So before you get mad at me for not being exuberantly positive, I think ultimately I am more positive than negative on all of this. I want us to acknowledge what the attorney is saying. So let me finish. Then I want to talk a little bit more about that Washington State cease and desist that someone on my team got. So customer obligations, along with strict policies in place that if violated, so he's saying like you need to get something in place to prevent people from abusing the system and taking money from the company before you allow people to withdraw funds. Again, I would advise that these measures be employed prior to any consideration of re-entrance into the North American market. Moreover, until such time as the usi-tech back office can determine the legitimacy of each North American account and perform an internal audit regarding BTC package buybacks, the consideration of final account payouts should be addressed with caution. In closing, let us be clear that we continue to interact and communicate with each and every state regulatory body and or Commerce Department in order to ensure USI stays within the law or actively endeavors to alter its conduct and furtherance of adherence. So I'm a little thrown by this because there's another attorney on YouTube, and you guys might have seen him, that has reached out to Hawaii, and I think Texas is even more important, and just seems to definitively get the response back that, that usi-tech hasn't reached out. It's hard to believe that. So maybe, it's so hard sometimes to understand what's being communicated, especially when people have a certain angle. And it seems like that attorney has an angle of wanting to head up some kind of class action lawsuit. So it just seems like he's kind of framing everything, really negatively. He tries to do it in a way that seems balanced, but it just feels like it's not. But it is hard, we have to acknowledge that the Texas cease and desist order still stands. And so his point is correct there, that nothing's changed there. And so, and maybe they continue to interact and communicate, but they really haven't taken the action they could have. They could have fought that cease and desist, but the opportunity to do that has ended, from my understanding. So I'm going to say again, I'm not an attorney, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. So we have to acknowledge that. And then Washington just sent a cease and desist to someone on my team, and it wasn't about something they did wrong. Maybe that's what initiated it, but they didn't state anything like that. It was really all about coming in. They got subpoenaed in, and there to, share every document, every communication, everything they've ever marketed, the names of everyone they've approached. You name it, their agreements with USI. And it just seemed really focused on, USI as a security, and that's their angle. Now, maybe it'll be determined that they won't end up believing that or, taking that stance. But as it stands, that's a big pain in the butt for this guy on my team. And it just really, brings into question how much headway are they making when they're interacting and communicating with each and every state regulatory body. And by the way, my team member did communicate with this attorney, with USI's attorney, and but he wasn't directed by Horst to speak with him about it, so he's really limited on what he could say. So, I'm just not sure what's going to turn out with that. So I feel obligated to share all this with you. This being said, I'm going back to the letter. This being said, but for the hardening of internal regulatory procedures imposed upon the members, USI's battles. Okay, so here's ultimately what he's saying, and I think it's important for us to take this in. This being said, but for the hardening of internal regulatory procedures imposed upon the members, I'll explain what he means by that, because it's so encryptic sometimes the way these attorneys talk, right? USI's battles within North America will be constantly fought from a less than optimal position. Let me read that again. This is coming from the attorney. USI's battles within North America will be constantly fought from a less than optimal position. So now let's decode what he said here at the beginning of the sentence. This being said, but for the hardening of internal regulatory procedures imposed upon its members. So he's saying that he knows that this is a harsh reality he's sharing here at the end as a conclusion, but he's saying it here because he wants to increase the resolve of USI, the commitment of USI to create internal regulatory procedures to prevent looting of money through taking loopholes in the system that the big money makers have been doing, to provide marketing materials in a consistent standard, like everything in the letter that he said. The two main things that he said that USI needs to do before opening back up in the US and Canada fully and paying everyone back fully. He's saying, I'm telling you this, this last harsh reality so that you really commit to that. So it's not just I'm bringing you bad news, but to really get you to commit to what I told you to do here. So he's saying, this being said, but for the hardening of internal regulatory procedures imposed upon the members, but it's still big to take this in. USI's battles within North America will be constantly fought from a less than optimal position. That's coming from usi-tech and their attorney to us. So we need to accept that. Now, let's say USI ends up giving up on the battle in North America. Does that mean USI ends? Not necessarily, not at all. Most of their market, from what I understand, North America is a big piece of it, but most of it is from outside the US. And USI's, got a cool concept going, and they're really taking it on. And, I do really kind of feel bad for them. If all of this happened, it's intense. It's intense what they're taking on. And it's an incredible show of heart and commitment. And while we might say they're out of integrity and not being able to fulfill lots of promises and deadlines and all kinds of things, ultimately it's a showing of integrity to be continually following through. And it might just be that, again, strengths are often weaknesses, that their strength and Horst's strength in being able to overcome insurmountable odds and insurmountable challenges and believing that he can overcome everything, if he believes in what he's doing, as powerful and as much of a strength as that is, it may be that sometimes someone in that situation can meet resistance that can't be overcome. And we have to acknowledge that, at least not in the way that we're thinking. Like, for example, as my son will always argue when my daughter and I are arguing anything is possible, he will always come back, well, right now, if you wanted to jump off that cliff and fly, you couldn't. And then we have to kind of say, well, no, but maybe we could get a hang glider or, a hoverboard. Or he goes, well, that's not the same thing. And so, maybe what they're trying to do needs to change in order to accomplish the ultimate goal. And maybe they will find that. Maybe that won't be this trip. You got, with USI as it is right now in North America. Now, it seems like the challenges, here's the good news, it seems like the challenges are just coming from North America, and they always kind of knew that would happen, right? So, how much do we as distributors want to, be involved with pouring our hearts and souls into this? That's a decision you have to make. I feel, responsible, for the people that I shared usi-tech with, and so I'm going to share all of these details with you. I'm in much of the same boat that you guys are, in that I put in more of my own funds because of the cost of the diamond packages, and I was really excited about the diamond packages, so I bought a lot of them, the tech coin. Because of that, I ended up putting more than I was able to take out. So, a lot of my main motivation, for those of you that have been with me for a long time, my main motivation in all of this, for the reason why I wanted to make so much money, was because, and worked so hard, I was putting in 20 hours, a day into this, was because for personal reasons, I need to make a lot of money to have a surgery done that I can't do in the US because I'm told that they'll damage me severely. I'll either lose permanently my voice, I'm told by the surgeons, or complete use of my arm, or my digestion, which I don't even know how you survive without your digestion, or my eyesight, and to remove a tumor. It's a slow-growing tumor. It doesn't appear to be malignant. There's no way to know that for sure without doing a biopsy, and we're just monitoring it right now and didn't want to poke a hole in it and possibly spread something if it was something serious. I'm believing it's not malignant. It's slow-growing, but eventually I have to remove it. And if I remove it in the US, the surgeons here are horrible at it, and they will probably harm me in a very serious way. If I didn't have kids and still need to be a provider, probably wouldn't matter so much to me. I mean, it would matter, but not nearly the level it does right now. And so I'm very driven, and I shared that story very early on, that's why I'm so driven. That's why I was working 20 hours a day. And why this was so important to me on a personal level. So it's a very big deal that I can't take my money out. It's a very, very serious deal for me. I worked extremely hard. I ended up putting more in than I got out because I really believed in it. I believed in these guys. And honestly, the way they're fighting for all of this, I mean, if all of this really happened, the way they're standing up and continuing on, that was with the same qualities that made me fight for them and build this up, and champion this thing. But things happen, and especially in very challenging, developing markets are very challenging. We know that. And when you're facing regulatory issues that are questionable, and then now they're taking a strong stance that it's a security, I mean, it's going to be challenging. And a lot of us kind of knew that was an issue. I knew it was an issue, obviously didn't know that we'd run into this. But now that we have, and now that I'm seeing what I've seen, I'm really feeling obligated to help share my perspective and not just be exuberantly positive all the time about this is definitely going to go big and let's push and let's buy more tech coins and let's buy more BTC packages. And even though we can't get commissions in the US, let's sign up more people because it's the best thing in the world. I love what this company was doing. I believe that we served tremendous value in educating the world about cryptocurrencies and opportunities. I would not have known what I know about cryptocurrency if it wasn't for USI. I wouldn't have had the guidance, the people to talk to be surrounded by a community that knows this stuff, and to immerse myself in it to the point of being able to tap into other networks and other opportunities. It was my bridge into the whole world of understanding it all. I'd watched documentaries and so forth beforehand, but I wasn't immersed in it. I wasn't able to live and breathe it. And I saw us be able to empower a lot of people in much the same way, and now open their minds up to opportunities they never would have dreamed of, and know technology and what's happening right now, right on the edge of innovation. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are there that know that and see that, and that's empowering, that wouldn't have without usi-tech, or may have much, much later down the road. Again, I don't know what vehicle or what mechanism would have allowed so many people to be introduced and so immersed in all of that if it wasn't for USI. So I saw and still see tremendous value associated with USI and having us bring it to market. Now that it's faced this challenge, it opens us up to ridicule and scrutiny by people on the outside saying, oh, it was a pyramid, it was a scam. I deeply, sincerely do not believe that. If it was, why would these guys still be here? They would have ran off a long time ago. So it's very obvious to me that it's not and never was. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge they're in a challenge. And I don't know if you know this, actually, a lot of leaders that didn't take part in, and I mean a lot of people that didn't take part in, the loophole and finding mechanisms and ways of taking out way more Bitcoin per day than they were supposed to, they have contributed their own Bitcoin just to kind of help USI out. I mean, it's the people that know the leaders of this company know that there's a lot of heart there. Like, I believe from the bottom of my heart that there's nothing scam about this, but I can see how they got into the challenge, particularly if, $100 million or more was taken out of their account at the same time that Bitcoin was going down and ICOs were going sideways and down. I can see, and then getting the cease and desists and requiring more time and energy to make decisions and hire, better advisors and solve big problems. I could see how everything coming at the same time, made this go from, growing exceptionally fast to the challenges that they're facing right now. Can they get through this? Yes, it looks like maybe they could. But is this a challenging situation to be in? Absolutely. And I guess I encourage you to go read the letter again if you didn't really spend time with it that's in your back office. I'm not going to go there because we're not supposed to show our back office or the USI logos. And click on the link and read the letter I just covered with you again, and just make mindful decisions and know that I'm not advising you to do anything, to stop or to go, to promote or not promote usi-tech. I'm not advising you. I'm not a financial advisor. If this were ever determined in any state or place in the world to be a security, understand that I want you to take responsibility and understand I'm asking you to look up the laws in your local area and to not break any laws in your local area. Honestly, let's be honest, it's really confusing. Regulators are taking a strong stance in some areas and not others. A lot of times their stance that they're taking is unclear or hasn't been stated publicly, or if it has, not in a not through a media that your average person hears. It's almost like you could talk to one attorney and they say one thing, you talk to another and they say something different. It's very, very confusing. But I guess ultimately what I'm saying is take responsibility, move forward with eyes wide open, that we are in a high risk environment industry. And, we need to be, I think we can be optimistic here in North America, but cautiously optimistic is what I'm saying. And even if this last sentence, or close to the last sentence, where he's saying USI's battles within North America will be constantly fought from a less than optimal position, even if that doesn't sound real good, I think we can acknowledge that even without North America, USI could survive. Now they could fail too. It could go belly up. They're in a very challenging position, but they could survive and go on, and the tech coin could survive. And this is an extraordinary group of people. It is, to accomplish what they have and to still be here fighting. It's an extraordinary group of people. I'm rooting for them, and I would love to see a withdraw button appear in my back office so I could start taking out some of those funds that I've made. But I don't want to do it at the expense of contributing to USI, not making it. So if I'm trusting the decisions that they're making regarding that is what I'm saying, and I'm acknowledging that they're a very challenging position is what I'm saying. And ultimately, my personal belief, and some of you will think I'm naive, my personal belief is what they said happened has actually happened. It makes sense to me. And I've met these people, and while I know they can't tell us everything, I ultimately believe them about what they're saying with all of this. And I feel bad for them, and I'm impressed that they're continuing on. And I think the fact that they're still here at all proves that there's nothing scam about this. Which just makes me want to fight for it more. But with all that said, it's a cautious optimism. Even the attorney is admitting It's going to be constant battles in North America. Man, I hope they can do it, man. It'd be one hell of a story. I mean, you know, success story, turnaround story. Um, Incredible to be able to continue on in North America, and maybe they will. But between now and that day, I just want you guys to, you know, move forward with eyes wide open about the challenges. That's all. All right. Hope this is helpful. I'll let you know as I know more. And those of you outside the U.S., man, you're going to have to, you know, if you believe in USI and you believe in the value of this company as I did in terms of what it was doing for people, not just the making money, but in terms of really leading the way and educating the world about the empowering truth of cryptocurrency and decentralized technology, and what they were planning to do with the tech coin and all of that. It's just incredible. So if you believe in that, we need leadership from you. We can't lead it right now. We're not distributors. So at this very time, we need people in Europe or Asia or all of those places to band together, because you guys are in a position where you can lead it. I know a lot of you look at Americans and you say, you know, you guys are cheesy, you're overly promotional, you're overly hypey. You know, maybe you can take a page from just some of the book and lead this thing forward. That would be extraordinary. If I was in the UK right now, if I was in Asia right now, you could be damn sure that I'd be leading this thing as with all my heart and soul. I would be doing everything within my power to make sure that this company succeeded. I'm in the US. I don't have that option. It's not quite the land of the free or the free market over here, unfortunately. So we're going to have to see that leadership from somewhere else. All right, guys, I'll keep you in touch as I learn more and we go forward here. I am still expecting the best.